Hi everyone. Tonight I'm going to be discussing problem behaviors and the assessment of those problem behaviors using two different types of assessments. So throughout this presentation, I'll be talking about a couple different things. The first one being, how do we determine when you should conduct a functional behavior assessment or an FBA, as well as a functional assessment, which is the FA. We'll also be discussing what constitutes a problem behavior and that definition of the problem behavior, including different functions that it could be. And then we'll be going into the difference between an FA and an FBA, as well as a little bit more in-depth information about the FBA, as that is the one I'm most familiar with. And then finally, we'll be discussing I will be sharing some information about my specific clinic and the organization, my organization's preference on conducting FBA versus an FA. So just to start out, I wanted to talk a little bit about myself. My name is Jessie Vaughn. I am in my fifth semester here at Ball State. I have also been working at a clinic for autism spectrum disorders for about 4 years now. I am currently a senior aide position, which means I'm just below the BCBA and report and collect data throughout the weeks to give to my BCBA, who then makes decisions and we implement from there. And I am making this presentation for the course, and I am really excited to have this opportunity to discuss both of these assessments. So the first thing we'll discuss is how you determine if you should conduct a functional behavior assessment and when. Functional behavior assessments and behavior assessments in general date all the way back to the idea of functionalism, which is the idea that behaviors are not based on what they look like, because the presentation of the behavior is more descriptive rather than connected to what the function of the behavior may be. And that's from Gresham et al. In 2001, made that statement. In this paper, he also goes further into describe multiple theories and describing the process of how an FBA came to eventually being used to assist in identifying antecedent and consequence events, as well as identifying things within a behavior assessment. You will also be able to provide socially appropriate behaviors to replace those problem behaviors after you have come to the conclusion on what they are and what they might be stemming from. Another researcher, Sugai et al. In 2001, proposed the idea that assessments should be completed when a behavior becomes challenging or the function is not easily understood. By completing these assessments, it helps you gain some insight on the behavior and why it may be causing it versus what you can do to help. So a problem behavior is a big term we are using within the assessment world. So I wanted to just cover a little bit of what constitutes a problem behavior, as well as what those functions of a problem behavior could be. So a problem behavior is a consistent pattern of behaviors that are not deemed acceptable by the caregivers or society. For those diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, these behaviors can show in a higher intensity, higher frequency, or have a bigger impact on the daily life. These can take the form of property destruction, aggression, self-injury behaviors, refusals. It can look very different amongst each child and can be even described differently within the same realm of behavior. So in order to determine what the function of a behavior may be, it's really important to look at all three of these things: the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. The antecedent is what's happening directly before the behavior, what the child does, and then the consequence, what happens directly after the behavior. One example of this would be a parent telling a child they can't have a piece of candy at the store, the child, which would be the antecedent, the child screaming, which would be the behavior, and then the consequence would be something like the parent giving them the candy after they screamed. An FBA uses multiple tools and factors to look at the behaviors using this pathway to determine what the function of behavior is. So along with the ABC data, antecedent, behavior, and consequence data, they also use interviews and discussions that I will touch base on later in this presentation. So after you collected enough evidence and data for what the behaviors look like and what's happening before and after, you can come to the conclusion on what is the function of the behavior, or what is the behavior stemming from, and why might it be happening. 4 different functions are most commonly accepted, and that would be escape maintained, access maintained, attention, and sensory or automatic. Quickly, just to touch base on these, escape maintained, this could look like getting out of a difficult task, not completing an activity, escaping to prevent something aversive. This could be a child screaming to be able to leave the classroom and go to the hallway because they don't particularly want to be in the classroom, or it's not an enjoyable environment for them. Access is anything tangible, a preferred activity, a reinforcing event. If this one is just gaining access to something, I'm going to get something for the behavior that I'm doing. For example, that one I had earlier, a child screaming in the grocery store and a parent giving them the candy afterwards. 2 others we have are attention maintained, which is a child is engaging in a behavior in order to gain attention from adults or peers. This can be both positive and negative attention. Sometimes children will engage in behaviors to get the attention of a teacher, even if the teacher will be yelling or reprimanding that child in the classroom. And the 4th and final function of behavior is the sensory or automatic. These are behaviors that are providing some sort of sensory input. This could be internal, it could be an auditory, a visual, a motor, sensory input, and it is just automatically reinforcing. So they're engaging in, for example, they are scratching their arms, and that is to get that input into their body. After discussing that, I wanted to go into what the difference between an FA and an FBA is. Most commonly you hear the term FBA, which is here on the right. It's a functional behavior assessment. And FBA can include interviews, indirect and then direct observations, rating skills, and this makes a hypothesis about what the function of the behavior may be. And then compared to a functional analysis, this is more of a environmental change, and it includes setting up specific conditions in a controlled environment in order to determine the function of the behavior. Assessors are making modifications to the environment as well as manipulating variables in order to bring out some challenging behaviors. By running a full FA, we can be more confident in our hypothesized function. Another key point is that an FA can be used in addition to an FBA, and this will ensure that you can test the function that you are hypothesizing and clarify that information you gained from interviews and observations. Digging a little deeper into an FA, an FA is typically run in 4 conditions. Those conditions being the different functions, so attention, demand, play, and alone. When the behavior is higher during specific intervals, that can hint or lead towards that the behavior is being reinforced by that condition. Functional behavior assessments is the one I'm going to go a little bit deeper in. Functional behavior assessments is a systematic process for understanding problem behavior and the factors that contribute to its occurrence and maintenance. And after an FBA is complete, there's going to be a hypothesized statement or summary indicating what that behavior may be and what the function of it may be. Components of an FBA, you're taking into account multiple different things. This could look like interviews from parents and caregivers. In the middle here, there's an example of an ABC chart, or the antecedent behavior consequence, to really get a clear picture of each behavior that's happening, as well as here on the right, more of a frequency tally, and that helps you gain how often the behavior is happening. Continuing with some information about the functional behavior assessment. When running one, the start to finish time typically takes about 3 weeks. It can be as short as maybe a week and a half, and can also be drawn out depending on access to the different people and communication that you may need. This includes interviews from parents, teachers, school supports, behavioral staff, a medical history, including previous and additional diagnoses, as well as different medical reports the child has received, direct observations and indirect observations, and then also laying out some antecedent behavior consequences of the previously exhibited behaviors. And that would look like the ABC chart I mentioned in the earlier slide. So with all this information, my specific clinic, we are more of a smaller, we're broken up into more smaller units. So we have a psychiatric unit, a complex behavior, and an EIBI. I work specifically with the younger children in the EIBI, and we will do FBAs when we're intaking a child, as well as throughout our process of treatment when a new behavior comes up, and we're discussing with the BCBA about what it may look like and what our plan of action is. The BCBA will conduct those interviews and do observations to hypothesize the function. And if the behavior does escalate or becomes higher intensity or frequency, we will call in complex behavior for support, because they have the staff and the environment and able to run a formal FA in our clinic. And that's done upstairs. I have had the chance to observe both the FBA and the FA. However, being in my unit, I am more familiar with the FBA and writing ABCs, as well as discussing with the BCBA what the function seems to be that I am seeing within sessions. And then finally, I included all my references here. I have both my research references as well as my image references. And I hope you enjoyed.